Good morning. Welcome everybody to the joy and pain of data, a CEO's perspective. My name is Sian Basker. I'm co-chief executive at Data Orchard, and Data Orchard is a social enterprise that helps organizations to get better with data. And I'm really delighted to be joined here today by three CEOs of really quite different charities. First of all, we have Sara Robinson. Give us a wave, Sara. There she is. Sara is Centre Director at St Augustine Centre in Halifax in West Yorkshire. The St Augustine Centre is a centre for asylum seekers and refugees in Calderdale and provides support for people fleeing war and persecution. Our second speaker will be Katie Eastaugh. Katie Eastaugh is CEO at the Cart Shed based in Herefordshire in the West Midlands. The charity uses occupational therapy in woodland and horticulture settings to support adults and young people who are struggling in life to manage their health and well-being. And our third speaker is Sara Derbyshire. Sara Derbyshire is CEO of Orchestras Live, a national charity based in Leeds, which enables communities to have access to world-class orchestral experiences. And they develop and produce creative projects and performances. So I'm not going to give any more away about the organisations and our speakers because they shall have the opportunity to do that themselves. Without further ado, I would like to invite Sara Robinson to talk from her perspective as CEO at the St Augustine Centre.
Thank you very much, Sian. Can everybody see that slide? All good to go from your perspective, Sian?
Not yet, just one moment. Yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, thanks for the introduction. I will jump straight in. Yes, Sian, you mentioned that we support people fleeing war and persecution who are placed into Halifax by the Home Office. We have a community of about 1,000 people, all ages, for 67 different countries, speaking 54 languages. And we refer to those people, which I hope will help in this presentation, as centre members. They become members of our organisation. In terms of the size of us, we have 13 full-time equivalents, 180 volunteers, and half of those volunteers are our centre members. And our turnover is just over £500,000. Okay, next slide, please. So just a quick snapshot of what we do. We basically provide specialist advice, health, housing, immigration, asylum, and welfare issues. And then we also do a ton of activities, trips, and really our centre members help run what is our community centre. We're a premises-based organisation. Okay, next slide. And crucially, we also raise awareness, which feels really, really important in this time where there are pernicious myths coming from central government, I have to say it, and from our media. So we work with schools and voluntary organisations and statutory organisations to actually mitigate some of those untruths and really help make Calderdale as welcoming a place as possible for people who are fleeing war and persecution. Okay, let's move on to data because that's why you're here. We have a range of data platforms that we use. So QuickBooks for our finance, we use Teams for files and staff interaction. We work with a company called WorkNest who have a platform for our HR and health and safety. Some really lovely whizzy dashboard stuff there around sickness. We use WhatsApp to communicate with our centre members, and we use MailChimp to communicate with our supporters. And of course, we have a website and the usual social media. Next slide, please. Okay, our foray into the world of the CRM system really began when the pandemic happened. I'd actually just started my job at that point. So I came into position as CEO a week before the pandemic. And we are the classic organisation that had manila folders. Everything was in manila folders, in drawers. And suddenly lockdown happened and we were used to people coming to us, and that's how we supported them, and they weren't able to come to us, and we didn't know really who they were. So we created I mean, it sounds really, really kind of Luddite. It was. We created a spreadsheet. That's how we began. And from there, we got some funding from Lloyd's and said, we really need to sort this out and get a CRM system. So luckily, we had a young person on our team. I mean, we have a number of young people, but this is a theme that keeps coming back. I'm a woman in my 50s. There are a few of us like that. We don't find data as easy as those who are a generation younger. But that young person did some fantastic research and came up with 3 shortlisted CRM providers. And we chose, and I've got their permission to say, but we chose Lamplight. And we chose them because they were cheap, and because they were focused on small organizations like us, and they were kind of a friendly face, and we could actually talk to them directly. And I will mention money because I think some of you will really be interested in that. It cost us around about £6,000 to set up our CRM, to migrate data. And then we pay an ongoing hosting fee of £48 a month. And I also need to say that the package was done on the basis that we wouldn't have to pay for help. And that has since changed sort of mid-contract. We do have to now pay for support. And we've got to the point a year in, so we've now had our CRM system. I'm going to show you what it looks like briefly. We've had it for 14 months, and in the last month, we had a specialist from Lamplight who actually came and sat with us just a couple of weeks ago, because we just needed someone in the room. They're really, really important to help us problem solve. And that wasn't cheap. That was 1,300 for that day, but he was absolutely fantastic. It was worth every penny. I will say it took 9 months to set up. So from the moment we started working with Lamplight and we pressed go, it took another 9 months until we could actually start using it. We had a month from hell. I won't lie. It was really difficult, that first month of transition. And then it just got better and better and better. And it gets better every week. Okay, next slide. This is what it looks like. I'm just going to show you because I think showing people is the most helpful thing. So this is like a color-coded diary for each of our work areas. So whether it's support, casework, or whether it's activities like boxing or football, you can see it all in there, or music. And you can go into each of those boxes and you can attach attendance notes or case note records. Okay, next slide, please. This is my absolutely favourite bit. I've had to obviously take out the names of the individuals, but this shows us every interaction that individual has with us, whether they've come for casework help, asylum help, or they've come to our welcome cafe, or they've learned how to do handwriting. And I absolutely love that we can track every single interaction with every single person that comes to us. Next slide, please. We can also track journeys. So you'll see different headers there: education, housing, physical activity, social connections. We have criteria for each level, and we have one-to-ones with centre members, and we ask them to self-score. So you can see the pink one was done on arrival, where they felt they were in each of those areas. And then we talked to them 4 months later and they moved. So we can track journeys, really helpful. Got to be honest, it's massively time consuming. We don't do loads of it, but it's there if we need it. Lamplight also, I won't show you here because of data protection, but it also creates lists, which are so helpful. So I can find out at the touch of a button how many centre members live in Sowerby Bridge and have Wi-Fi support, or how many people have been coming to us in the last month with a dental issue, and what languages do they speak. I mean, the possibilities with what you can do, as long as the data's good, are endless. Next slide, please. And also, obviously, we can run reports. So here's just a quick one to show how many different people, profiles, that's centre members, came to us for what kind of activity, how many came for English, how many came for our free shop, and so on. But there are, again, numerous reports we can do at the touch of a button, which is brilliant. And it means we can make beautiful, next slide, please, annual reports. I just bumped into one of our trustees when I was walking the dog today, and I'm going to read a quote from her in a minute, but I said, "What do you think about our data?" She said, "I think it's amazing." She said she runs a massive TV company, and you'd think that the voluntary sector are behind. She said, we didn't have anything like this. She said, I love the way you humanize. The data's all there. I feel like I can do a deep dive into it, but you humanize it when you report on it by using, you know, illustrations that kind of bring some of the data to life. Okay, next slide, please. I'm just going to finish by telling you a little bit about the joys and the pains that we've been on this 14-month or 2-year journey. Okay, inevitably, we know a lot more about who we're there for in great detail and how they utilize us. And it can be the tiniest things. For example, we're getting Christmas presents for everybody this year. We can pull off a report that tells us the gender, the age, and where people live in seconds, and we can buy our Christmas presents accordingly. Obviously, we can track trends and changes. I have to say the staff have, in the main, been brilliant. Volunteers, less so. I'm going to mention that a little bit more about that in a minute. We can make reports in seconds. We can evidence things with funders. A shout out to Lamplight. I'm going to come on to some of the pitfalls with Lamplight in a minute, but they have been massively patient. They're a real human face. They've been really kind of working on with us. And the way Lamplight works is we have control. We can change things. We don't have to rely on them. The issue is we don't necessarily know how to have control, but they're helping us with that. And finally, I find it's juicy. Like, I find it, if I've got a moment, I'll do a deep dive into it and I'll have a real look at like how people are interacting, what they're coming for, what the issues are. And I leave with a real sense of what we do in minutiae of it. And next slide, please. Some of the difficulties we've experienced. Okay. You are building the plane while you're flying it. This is my sort of main point I want to make to any CRM providers out there. Okay, you set it up, which is a headache in itself, but you set it up and then you press go, and only then do you discover how hard it is. And Lamplight are with you for a bit. They're with you for a bit. They're flying the plane and you're alongside them, and then they say, okay, bye. And then you're still trying to drive the plane whilst flying it, and it's really, really difficult. You don't know what you need until you need it. So in an ideal world, you'd have a 2-phase process. Your CRM provider would come back 6 months into that journey and they'd do a kind of work through with you and they'd get it perfect. We do have a lack of in-house expertise. That's why we've just spent 1,300 on getting Lamplight back. I think we're going to have to keep doing that, or create a role in-house. We have lost some older volunteers who just have found it too much. They want the manila folders back again. Lots to say about Lamplight that's great, but it doesn't look particularly pretty. There's no whizzy dashboard. Why isn't there? It would be great to log in the morning and it tell you, this is the number of centre members you engaged with in the last month, and so on. So I think that's something that could be developed. Inevitably, it's only as good as the data entry we put in. It does take time. It does require staff to care and know why they're doing it and be curious about our work and what the data tells us. And I feel like we're only halfway through our data maturity journey. We're not really capturing qualitative information yet. We know we can, but we're not there yet. And finally, we aren't making enough space to actually sit down and go, so what is this telling us? There's so many more decisions we could make if we just stopped and really analysed. And final slide, please, is just to say that even though I've just gone through the difficulties, it really is worth it. And in the words of my trustee, she said, what I love about the way St. Augustine's uses data is it allows us to simultaneously see the big picture and then zoom into the minute, intricate detail. So it's enormously helpful for funding applications and grants, but can also be used to understand and then improved much more nuanced elements of the way the organisation works. And it makes the way we tell the story of our organisation so much more authentic and compelling. We don't just provide meals or immigration, we provide X amount of meals to X amount of people and help X amount of people through the asylum system. And each one of them is an individual and we know their needs and how we've been able to work with them. And personally, I think that's bloody brilliant. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Sara Robinson. Can I invite the audience, please, to clap as well as you can in the chat channel. There's an emoji there, so you can absolutely chat in there. Thank you very much. Now, if you have specific questions for Sara, can I please invite you to put them in the Q&A? If it's specifically for Sara, please write Sara. And note that Sara spells her name without an H. Just to confuse things today, we have a Sara with an H and a Sara without. So a huge thank you there for you, Sara, at St Augustine's. I look forward to getting into the chat in more detail in a moment. I would like to move swiftly on to our second speaker, Katie Eastaugh from the Cart Shed in Herefordshire. Katie, would you like to come onto screen and come off mute and share your slides?
Thank you very much, Sian. I'm rather daunted after that because my story is a little different, a little more involved. Can you see the slides all right?
Yeah, absolutely, that's fine, thank you.
So thank you very much for inviting me to come along. My name is Katie Eastaugh and I am the CEO of the Cart Shed, a charity based in northwest Herefordshire, which was established in 2011. We work with adults and young people who are experiencing poor mental health by using the principles of occupational therapy, enabling individuals to find meaning and purpose in their lives. We work outdoors. It's not moving. Sian, why is it not moving? There we go. We work outdoors in woodland year-round, whatever the weather, combining the OT with creative activities such as coppice crafts, horticulture, willow and land art. And this is a story of my data journey, which is a mix of belief and cynicism, and is because I'm very much travelling the road. I enjoy hearing about how data is used to improve people's lives, and these two images illustrate John Snow's identification of a source of cholera in the 1850s and was the start of public health. And the other is looking at migrating patterns of birds. Sorry, I have a cold. And how using data such as this can impact on the environment by identifying that perhaps ploughing a little later in the year supports the well-being of the birds as they travel to their winter feeding grounds. All fascinating, but really not relevant to me or the Cart Shed. I'm the leader of a small charity. We're tucked away in the Herefordshire countryside, and our enterprise is too small, and the cohort we work with is far too insignificant. It's about 100 people a week. Data is big. It's costly, unknown. It's not us. We are billhooks, spokeshaves, froes, and wooden mallets, just like this. But in 2017, Sian from Data Orchard sent me an opportunity to attend a one-day workshop, which I have to admit I ignored until guilt got the better of me. I applied, went to the workshop, and there saw examples of how other organisations were able to analyse who they worked with, where people came from, how long they engaged with people, how it had impacted on them. And then really importantly, how the information had had a positive impact on funding applications. It was eye-opening, exciting, relevant, and as a result, I was hooked. So working with Sian, the Cart Shed applied for and won a £50,000 impact grant that was to last a year. At this point, in 2017, we had 8 part-time members of staff. And clinical notes were handwritten in notebooks. Attendance registers were logged in Excel spreadsheets, but collected in an uninterrogatable way. Paper documents were rain damaged, muddy, or coffee marked. We could extract data, such as how many people we work with in a year, but it wasn't easy. It was open to error and it was incredibly time consuming. As an organisation, we appear simple. We combine the intrinsic benefits associated with being outdoors and meaningful activities to transform people's lives. So the challenge for us was to prove it. It was important to take everybody with us, from the chairman to the newest volunteer, and at times it was upsetting as tempers frayed, not least when trying to identify who we would and would not work with. On one side were those who said we should be working with those who self-medicated on alcohol and drugs, and others saying that we absolutely should not engage with people like that. So lots of tensions as we went through this process. All our systems were interrogated, found to be no longer fit for purpose or actually non-existent. At the time, we were using two self-reporting wellbeing questionnaires, the Warwick-Edinburgh Mental Health Wellbeing Survey and the short form 36. They tracked the journey of an individual, but they couldn't be analysed to show how they impacted the service. The data didn't tell us about us. And the information it revealed about our participants was limited, and in the case of Warwick Edinburgh was often wrong. The dive was so deep, there were many times that I thought we had lost our way in our quest to understand. We explored data sets from local, regional and national surveys that were pertinent to our service, such as the ONS Loneliness Survey, and from these created baseline, interim and exit questionnaires. These questionnaires were to be used to prove our new theory of change, that we would enable individuals to self-manage their physical and mental health and well-being in a sustainable way. As the impact programme progressed, we adopted a cloud-based file sharing facility and brought in digital support services, which improved our efficiency and was a godsend during the pandemic, as we could all see and use the same information because data was not stuck in someone's notebook. Part of the impact management programme included the acquisition of a customer relationship management system, a CRM. Whilst the work led by Sian was exhausting and challenging, and it was ultimately rewarding when we were looking at our theory of change, the CRM, on the other hand, was a tale of woe and despair. We were granted £15,000 to buy in a system as part of our original impact bid. Unfortunately, it was me who had to identify the right provider and the right CRM as part of our bid application. I had never interrogated a CRM. I'd never even put data into a CRM. I like trees and woods, and a dashboard is what you find on a car. First company we worked with went under just after they'd claimed the lion's share of the funds. The second funder, 9 months later, also went under, leaving us with an expensive white elephant, a system that just didn't work. The whole process was not helped by the CRM consultants not understanding the sector. They could not grasp why we needed registers, because registers are only needed in schools. Why two people could be unrelated but living in the same household, and why you needed to connect individuals to multiple entities such as GPs, hospitals, clinicians and so forth, because actually that was just what a hospital did, not the community sector. So it was a bit desperate. And then there was a change of staffing. We employed a new office manager who, as luck would have it, used to run the waste management of Lincolnshire County Council. She understood what a CRM was. She spoke CRM. She knew what an object was. I'm still not sure I absolutely know. Even better, she actually brought with her a volunteer who understood the community sector and CRMs. And between them, they unravelled the chaos and identified what consultancy we still needed. And 6 months later, 3 years after the fiasco began, we went live and the data started to churn. So in May of this year, I sat down with our office manager to press the magic button that was going to bring all the wellbeing data to life and prove our theory of change, lovely dashboards and so forth. Sadly, that was not to be. It was a unicorn moment. I discovered there is no magic button and we could extract data, but we were yet another piece of consultancy away from analysing what our data might be telling us about our theory. Whilst we have yet to conclusively prove our theory, we can now extract data around attendance and have begun to see patterns that are influencing our decision-making process. Now that all our clinical notes are on the same system, we are able to track how much time we spend on activities that are not directly related to our service. And this data is helping me to illustrate to our board how and where we are being pulled ever more forcefully by statutory services to plug the gap that they are leaving as they raise the threshold for support ever higher. The impact on our service is that we are short of time. Greater staff input to managing challenging caseloads, which is unsustainable. With the data, we can now begin to redefine what we are able to do. We can stand firm and have confidence in our decision-making process. We are comfortable that we know who we are, and knowing this is helping us to push back against the powerful force of the statutory sector. We get no NHS funding, and the small amount that comes via the local authority is at a capped rate. So, was it worth it? If we hadn't had CRM, if we hadn't undertaken the impact programme, we wouldn't have had a safe, secure system to be able to respond to the challenges of the pandemic. If we didn't have the CRM to process key data such as referrals, we wouldn't be able to manage the surge we've seen this year. Without the CRM, we'd struggle to manage clinical notes effectively. If we didn't have the data, we would not be able to track attendance and use this knowledge to instigate a new attendance protocol. And then finally, a bit about the team. We've undertaken 5 data maturity assessments with Data Orchard since 2018. And although we've had staff changes, there are positive trends throughout. So the spider's web bit in the middle is where we started, and the outer ring is where we were in 2022. So improvement, and I think once we've got our dashboards, we'll see a much greater move to the outside of the web. It's very exciting. So how are we using data to help us make decisions? In 2020, most staff didn't see much in the way of benefits and rewards for the data, for data in relation to the services. In 2020, across 6 areas, the data could be having an effect. Only half the team saw moderate benefits in areas like evidencing needs and problems of participants evidencing impact on stakeholders. Also in 2020, only a very small proportion of the team saw that any extensive benefits in terms of participant outcomes, reach and targeting. And staff reported that they spent 20% of their time working with data, which is quite a lot in terms of what it costs the charity. 2 years later, in 2022, there's far greater rewards and much more extensive across all 6 areas, noticeably in evidencing impact, client outcomes, and evidencing the needs and the problems of the participants. So we're not only moving to the right, we're also getting darker. Our pink is getting darker. However, it took more effort. Whoops. 30% of staff time. 30% of staff time is now spent working on the data. This slide demonstrates how comfortable the whole team is with processing data. With a smaller cohort in 2018, you can see that there is quite a range from about 1 to 7.5 in terms of confidence in measuring our impact. And as our team has grown, actually that discrepancy has reduced, and now we are far tighter as a team in understanding what we have. So if I had to do it all again, what have I learned? First of all, I'd separate the impact management project from the CRM project. They were 2 huge pieces of work. Either one would have been a big project on its own. And as Sarah mentioned, we were still trying to fly the plane. I would ensure that we had a competent member of staff with 2 days a week capacity to manage the CRM project, to work with consultants, trial the system, train the staff, and then manage the CRM on an ongoing basis. To get the consultancy to deliver a system like ours would probably cost £30,000. That's a bit of a guess because we did have as I described, disasters on the way. So it could be that the £15,000 would have been enough. But as Sarah mentioned, they got theirs for considerably less. So obviously, if you know what you're talking about, you might be able to commission something a lot cheaper. And then, of course, there's another ongoing cost, because having purchased the new system, you'll need to include annual licenses for all staff. We have to buy apps to add on to our system. So it can do lots of really clever things, but for every app, there's a license for every member of staff for every year. Our digital services costs have gone from paying for 3 laptops and a few virus scanners to buying licenses for Datto, which is a cloud-based file storage system, trend security, Salesforce CRM, and technical support at around £11,000 a year to safely capture, process, and store our data. And we also had to buy 17 computers. And that is my story. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Katie. A huge round of applause there for everyone, if you can get your emojis to work. Thank you so much, Katie. We will be posing questions directly to Katie in the next, after the break. But in the meantime, if you have any specific questions, please put them in the Q&A. We shall talk more. Lots and lots of rounds of applause coming. Our final presentation this morning is from Sara Derbyshire. Sara is CEO at Orchestras Live, and I'm going to hand straight over to Sara now. And Libby is going to be doing changing the slides for this. Libby, can you share the screen? Perfect. Thank you. I shall go off screen.
Thank you, Sian, and I hope everybody can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you and see the slides fine. Thank you,
okay,
Sarah.
perfect. Okay. And thank you to Sarah and Katie for those absolutely fascinating presentations. I think you're going to find mine tells another story. So I think if we're learning anything about data, it's that it can do so many different things and mean different things to different people. I'm going to talk a little bit about Orchestras Live and our journey with data. And Libby, if you'd like to move on to the first slide, proper slide. So Orchestras Live has been operating for over 50 years. We're a national producer of professional orchestral work. We have a remit to ensure communities in less well-served areas of the country have access to world-class orchestral experiences. We work with numerous partners and British professional orchestras, and we deliver bespoke creative activity and performances that are relevant to specific communities and audiences. Next slide, please. We particularly focus our work with communities in historically underinvested non-metropolitan locations in England. And our mission is to engage people of all ages and backgrounds in creating work that harnesses the transformative power of orchestral music to inspire, bring joy, and support well-being. We work with around 30,000 people each year, approximately 20 professional orchestras, dozens of freelance musicians and music leaders. We're funded by the Arts Council and were recently confirmed as a national portfolio organisation, which means we receive funding from them for the next 3 years. About 20% of our income currently comes from co-investment by partners, particularly local authorities and music education hubs, and the rest is largely raised from trusts and foundations. I joined the organisation in 2016. And since then, we've grown from a team of 7 to 11 staff members, and we're about to appoint 3 new community impact coordinators. We've always been a largely dispersed team and have used a cloud-based intranet for many years. When I joined, the organisation was no stranger to data. A bespoke dashboard, updated monthly, recorded performance against KPIs, and was the principal reporting tool for the board. It had been developed with assistance from a data tech team at EY, thanks to one of our trustees, and was in 2016 considered to be pretty unusual for a cultural organisation such as ours. However, it became apparent to me that the dashboard was largely focused on recording success against finite targets, rather than exploring data in ways that helped us understand both our impact and where we could make improvements. Next slide, please. As an organisation, we want data to enable us to understand and demonstrate our impact, to analyse trends, to ask questions of ourselves, to learn, improve and plan. As a CEO, I'm looking for data that can be easily understood by the board, is accessible and is used across my team, shows trends and helps me develop strategy, taking staff, trustees, funders and partners with us through an evidence-based approach. We had a lot of data coming in from partners, but we didn't have a way of tying in an evaluation of projects to our own business plan delivery. Areas where it was feeding in were driven by funding reporting, such as the Arts Council, and trustee requests that were not always knowledge-based. We identified a gap where we were talking about things internally, rather ad hoc, without consistent analysis or benchmarking. So it really wasn't taking us anywhere. And it wasn't possible to establish trends. So we began to look at developing a more sophisticated model of internal review with the help of another trustee who had experience of measuring performance in schools. Internal scoring of projects provided more coherent and data-driven board reports. We moved from very wordy reports plus the dashboard of too many KPIs to an internal reporting grid and a slimmed down dashboard. However, still unwieldy, as you can see from this slide, in terms of the internal reporting grid, and way too much information for anybody to take in at one go. The next step was to extrapolate from the raw data and begin to analyse it to prompt discussion and reflection. We undertook the Data Orchard maturity tool that was done by all trustees and staff through 2019 to 2020. And we learnt a number of things. Principally, we learnt that people had very different understanding of what data is and how we can use it. Staff weren't really accessing and using data for planning. They talked about the process of inputting data, but not the results that came out of that. And so in general, the culture rather confirmed my thinking about the dashboard, which was that only those involved in reporting to the board were engaging with the data, and it didn't show trends or prompt reflection. Next slide, please. So what did we do to try and change things? The first thing that we did was a piece of organizational development. And within that, we gave a completely new emphasis to data in roles knitted into the organizational structure and central to it. We now have a production and insight coordinator, and they're now supported by a data and administration assistant. In 21-22, we undertook a full data audit, and we worked on streamlining our processes, what we ask, and trying to understand why we're asking it so that we can be much more focused in that way. We introduced a data strategy as part of our business plan in the same year, and that fed into this current year's business plan and the application for 3-year funding to the Arts Council. We now have 2 working groups who support our work around data, and those are working groups made up of both trustees and staff. The first is ambition and quality, looking at perceptions of the organisation and measurement of impact. And the second is looking at dynamism, how we use data to inform our plan, understand our costs and drive income generation. It informs all our data collection from claim forms and evaluations through to partner surveys and needs analysis. And we've also introduced regular reflections meetings so that that work is less ad hoc. Next slide, please. This has led us to begin to explore new areas for data collection and analysis, and it's particularly influenced our thinking about diversity and inclusion, what we should and could be doing with data. We're using data now to track both internal operations and process and external delivery, relating to the people involved in delivery, inclusive practice and participants' experience. And we're now reporting regularly to a diversity and inclusion committee. And the next priority in our business plan that we're starting to apply data to is environmental responsibility, understanding how we can track our carbon footprint, how we can report on that, what data is meaningful, and so on. Next slide, please. What can we do now that we couldn't do before? Well, one thing that we've introduced, again with support from another trustee, is developing a way to assess the return on our investment of resources. That's time and money in terms of impact. Not the financial return, but the extent to which our efforts are delivering the aims of our business plan. It's not a finite result. Again, it's a matter of asking ourselves the right questions to inform planning and decision-making at a time when resources are scarce and must be applied for optimum results. We're much better at setting the right targets to set regarding measurement, and we're getting much better at asking the right questions to find out really useful information rather than the, oh, it would be nice to know kind of questions. We're also learning better how to use soft data and the power of soft data. It's not all numbers. And so now decision-making is down to an informed group of people using data more objectively. It's not down to one individual, and we have a shared trajectory and objectives. Next slide, please. Data is now key to our demonstration of impact. These are two infographics that we've recently produced that enable us to communicate more easily with funders and with potential partners. And it's sometimes difficult for an organization like ours that doesn't have an obvious model and works in a variety of beneficiary areas to articulate our purpose and impact. Data collection and analysis has given us the tools to start doing that more effectively. So data is central to our resilience, our plans for growth, and developing expertise. Last slide, and that is my story. Thank you very much.